Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about convolution and how to use it in your music. So, the exact mathematical definition of convolution is a bit too technical to go over in this video. There's tons of different videos and articles out there that basically explain convolution in a more mathematical way. But in this video, I'm just going to be giving a brief explanation on how it works, kind of a more practical way of thinking about it, and ways of using convolution in your music. So essentially, what convolution is basically the process of transforming one signal with another signal to create an entire new output. And the reasoning of doing this would basically be to see how that input signal is altered or filtered by the other signal over time. So the general way of thinking why we would use convolution in the first place kind of stems back to where we would basically record rooms to basically capture their reverb outputs. So we would kind of record a kind of input and then kind of see how the room treats that input and how it responds to it. Basically, it would give us kind of like a reverb tail, and we could use that reverb tail in junction with convolution to basically apply that reverb tail to any other sound that we can imagine, basically. In the process of using this in a DAW, it can be very useful. If you don't have time to go to that specific room to record one sound, you can basically have the sound in your DAW and then load in some kind of convolution plugin and apply that already pre-recorded reverb to the sound, and then it sounds like you recorded it in that room. So in that sense, it's pretty useful to use convolution, and I'll go a little bit in more detail about the process of basically extracting that reverb, and yeah. So I'm going to start off with a brief explanation on how we would essentially capture that reverb in the first place and how we would use it afterwards to use it in a convolution aspect. So let's start off with kind of a diagram. Let's say that this is our room and we kind of have a sound source, right? Let's just say it's some kind of speaker emitting some sound. We can have like a microphone too that's just picking up what is being recorded. The sound source is going to play some sound, and then that sound is going to basically be projected everywhere in the room. The sound waves are going to be bouncing off of the walls, hitting the microphone, sometimes bouncing off on other walls, hitting the microphone, and it's basically capturing all these different reflections. And because we're in a specific room and the walls can be whatever material it is, naturally it's going to absorb some of the sound as it is hitting, as the sound is hitting the walls, right? So over time, it's going to absorb more and more, and it's going to decay, and after a specific amount of time, there won't be any more sound waves that are projecting. And in that sense, basically all the bouncing that the sound waves are doing are kind of echoing the sound a bit and smearing the overall sound. And this kind of gives us the effect of having a sustained and like a smooth kind of reverb sound, as opposed to a more static kind of delay effect. The capturing of the reverb is kind of specific where we would first of all play some kind of impulse. This impulse can be something like a short noise burst or a sine sweep. Preferably, we want something that is short in time and also covers most, if not all, of the frequency spectrum. So this can be our little impulse. This is in the time domain, so this will be our impulse. And then when that impulse basically is being emitted through the room, the sound waves are going to bounce off and it's going to do a bunch of echoing and smearing. And we're going to have this kind of tail going on. This is our reverb, or our impulse response. Or technically, this is not really the impulse response in a way. I'll get back to this in a bit. We can just assume that this is kind of an impulse response for now. But this is essentially like our reverb. And once we have that done, we have our output signal, which is our impulse response, our impulse combined with the reverb that this has produced. After this, we would kind of extrapolate the true impulse response of our signal, so what the reverb or our room basically sounds like, by doing deconvolution. So we're going to extract out the impulse to have our pure room tone at the end. And this is basically what we can use to apply to a bunch of other sounds to make it sound like that sound has been recorded in the specific room. So now we're going to go to practical uses of using convolution. And to start off, I'll just give a basic overview of kind of like what is possible with convolution in a basic use. So I have this drum loop here. A standard drum loop. And we're going to turn on Kilohertz Convolver. Now, this is a plugin by Kilohertz, which basically allows you to perform convolution on any sound. And Kilohertz Convolver already comes with a bunch of factory impulse responses, so like stock impulse responses that have either been recorded in a room or artificially created. And this basically allows you to convolve your input signal, which in this case is the drum loop, with any other kind of signal to kind of morph them together in a way. In the sense that we can use this in a room, like a room reverb kind of context, these are a bunch of spaces that have been recorded or created. And these are kind of supposed to emulate sound propagating in a room. So we have a bunch of garage sounds like churches, kind of like universities, a bunch of different kind of rooms. And we can see that applying this to our drum loop, it sounds like that drum loop is being played in a room. We can basically toggle through a bunch of different kind of impulse responses, and it kind of, changes the character of the room, and it can basically control a bunch of different parameters like the shape of the room, how big it is, the materials that the walls are made into, all these different kind of parameters. And it's really fun to just go and try to, see how many rooms there have been recorded. And obviously, you can also use your own impulse responses. So if you have specifically recorded a room that you would like to capture, and you have the impulse response, you can basically blow this into Kilohertz Convolver or any other convolution plugin, and basically put any sound that you want in that specific room. And Kilohertz Convolver comes with a bunch of parameters that you can change the impulse response with. You can have fade in, which just fades the sound. Stretch is kind of like a time stretching of the impulse response, so it can make it sound more high pitched and faster, or like lower in pitch and slower. This tone is kind of like an EQ tilt, so you can kind of like affect if the impulse response is basically affecting more of the high frequencies or more of the low ones. So this one makes it sound more rumbly. this basically affects more of the high end. And then the feedback is basically kind of like a self-convolution process in a way, where it just kind of feedbacks more into itself and convolves it more and more. So you can start to have these kind of metallic tails, which can be pretty useful too. And the delay is basically just kind of like how on a reverb you have this pre-delay. So kind of like a delay before the reverb happens. Yeah. While having impulse responses of rooms can be really useful, I think the magic that lies within convolution is you can basically apply impulse responses that are kind of more non-traditional in a sense, where they're not exactly rooms that have been recorded, but more of a sense something you have created, whether it be something in like a sample pack that you have or kind of in a sound design session, basically anything. And just seeing how that sound interacts with the input signal and how it morphs the signal in a way. So with these spaces, there's also other kind of stock factory impulse responses that Kilohertz offers, where you can add basically impulse responses of different like chords, so like tonal elements. You can add literal like vocal samples into it, glitches. Phase is pretty interesting. I'm going to go more into depth later on that. Microphones, so you can kind of like emulate the different, microphone tones and cabinet sounds, and really just a bunch of different impulse responses that are not exactly room reverbs. So you can basically kind of just just convolve the input signal with anything that you'd like and get a bunch of different tonal variations, and it's very, very cool to mess around with. So next off, I'm going to talk about how you can use convolution to basically add depth to your mix, whether it be on drum loops or specific elements in your mix that you kind of want to place in a room in a way, or kind of just shape the sound a bit differently than usual. I'm going to explain this with kind of this dry drum loop. These are just a bunch of different drum samples that I MIDI sequenced. So that's our dry drum group. And then I kind of created a wet version where I took some of these drum groups and I placed a convolution plugin. This is mConvolution NB, and just kind of simulated different types of rooms for some of the drum sounds. So it sounds a bit more different, and you can kind of hear that it's kind of simulating a bunch of different kind of reverbs, and it's really cool. Check this out. This is the dry. And that's the wet. So it sounds drastically different, and I'm going to show you guys the process of doing that. So let's start with the kick. So in the same way that I showed how Kilohertz Convolver works, mConvolution NB is kind of the same thing, but it kind of has a bit more flexibility to it. There's a lot more parameters that you can adjust. This is just a random impulse response that I've selected off of the stock impulse responses that Milda offers. This one just kind of captured my attention because it was a lot more suitable for low end. It kind of had this cool sweeping effect, which I thought was interesting. So basically, I just took this impulse response, kind of shaped it with the volume a bit, applied this very drastic low pass envelope, because to begin with, it was very long and sustained, and I kind of wanted to shorten it a bit. Kind of added a high pass envelope, and you can click on advanced settings here at the bottom. And this kind of just displays a bunch of other parameters. I think the only thing that I messed around with was the stretch here, which kind of just adjusts the timing and how fast or slow it is. You can kind of see in this visualization here, the time scale is changing. So it just affects how slow or fast the sample is. I also applied a very short impulse response to this rim shot. This was just kind of a more experimental impulse response that I applied to the rim shot to give it a bit more character. The cool thing with convolution too is that it can kind of apply a lot of stereo width to your sound. Normally, if your impulse response is very stereo, it can basically apply that stereo-ness to your sound. It can be really fun to, you know, kind of change your stereo width and perception of the sound. Some of the drums in here I have remained unchanged. This was just kind of to explore the capabilities with some of the drums. This one kind of changes it a lot. Another sound design impulse response. Just scrolling through these impulse responses one by one is very fun. Just seeing how like drastic it can change the sound. Yeah, very cool. And I think for the Kabasa, yeah, I just added a slight impulse response, just kind of emulating like a room reverb more than anything else, and just applying the same thing to the other Kabasa sounds. And yeah, that's basically it. Next off, I'm going to apply convolution to this kind of dubstep slash tearout kind of bass. So I have this multipass which has 2 convolvers and just a little bit of EQ, doing some pretty cool processing to the sound. This is what it sounds like without, just to show you the original sound. So basically we have a sine wave with some stereo noise. I have this pitch shift envelope going on, so it just kind of like makes the pitch drop. I'm using this wave shaper technique that I explained in my previous video, which gives a lot of the harsh kind of tonality to the sound with the higher harmonics. And the fun part, this multipass. So this thing is really fun because I found that convolver is actually really useful to add tonality to kind of like tearout gun basses. That and also this kind of phase convolution, which is very interesting. So to kind of explain what the phase impulse responses of the kilohertz plugin kind of do, basically how it works is the impulse response is basically going to shift the phase of the different frequencies in your signal. This is going to cause some of the frequencies to basically be delayed from each other, because if you remember, you know, the phase of a signal is basically its timing, and when you change the phase of the signal, it changes the timing of that signal. So if you're changing the phase on a specific frequency, it's going to cause that frequency to be at a different time than all the other frequencies. And the kind of phase impulse responses, especially the disperse, kind of mimic the way kilohertz disperser works, by basically allowing the high frequencies to pass through first and then just kind of sweeping down. Later on, the lower frequencies go, and it kind of creates this like laser-like effect. So this is without the convolution. This is just a standard saw wave. And with the convolver. So you can hear it's kind of like having a zapping effect. So essentially, the phase shift that the convolution is performing is basically allowing the high frequencies to pass first, and then it's sweeping down. You can have a bunch of different timings of this. So you have like 80 milliseconds. It's a lot more subtle. 20 milliseconds. And there's a lot of other things too, like phaser. So this is just altering the phase shifts of the frequencies in a bunch of different ways. And going back with the bass sound, basically this is performing the same effect. Because that's the sound beforehand. And that is with the the impulse response activated. Also, another fun thing is this other convolver. So what I did is I splitted the signal into 3 different frequencies. This is using multipass, so you can go up to 5 different frequency splits, but I just chose 3. And I kind of separated the mid band here, so around 325 to 3 kilohertz. I kind of wanted this area to be a bit more different in tonality. So it sounds a lot more metallic in a way. And that's in use of just taking some like standard dubstep clap. Like I have this specific clap saved, which just sounds like a dubstep clap. And I put that in the convolver, kind of messed around with the parameters a bit, and it gave me this metallic tonality. Which I really liked, so I kept that. And yeah, it just kind of shapes the sound a bit more, and it makes it sound more aggressive in a way, which is really cool, in my opinion. Another cool way of using convolution, in my opinion, is for color bass things. Usually in color bass, there's a lot of resonating that people like to do, where they kind of take a dubstep bass and kind of apply some process to it to make it sound more melodic and more like a chord. So I have this crow bass. I'm going to start off with applying this 3-band crossover rack. This essentially just takes the multi-band compressor. This is kind of like an init preset, so it's not really affecting the sound in any way. It's just allowing me to split the signal in 3 different frequency ranges. I'm going to take this mid-band here and apply a kilohertz convolver to it. And under the synthetic tab of the impulse responses, there's a lot of these chords that you can choose. I'm going to take minor 7th here. And you can already hear that this impulse response is basically applying this like chord kind of effect to the sound. It's a bit drawn out, so I'm going to fade this out. To make it a bit shorter. And I'm just going to stretch this because this is in E, and this chord is a C minor 7, so I'm just going to stretch it about 80%. So then it's in E minor. And there you go, instant color base. Another way you can use convolution is to do textural shaping. So basically apply some kind of frequency or timing impulse response that is like moving around a lot and has a lot of changing points to it, and basically apply that to a static sound, which can be really fun. So I have this lab soft piano, just a regular piano sound, and I want to apply this convolver to it, which basically has this kind of thing loaded up. I want to add the textural elements to a water sound, so I'm going to take some kind of water sound, I'm going to drag and drop it to this convolver. And right now, you can't really hear it do much. That's because the sound is already subdued a lot. There's not a lot of high frequencies going on. So what I'm going to do is just accentuate that by adding a bunch of high shelves to it to bring out a lot of the sharpness and the high definition of the piano. And this basically allows it to have the convolution apply to it more, to the high frequencies. Basically, you're just allowing it to have a blank canvas to kind of sculpt the sound along with that. So we're going to turn it on and see what happens. You can stretch it a bit. So you get these really nice textures, which could be used for a bunch of different genres. A lot of ambient stuff can be done with that too. Just messing around with it a lot more. Create these really nice pad and ambient textures, which is really cool. And you can just switch through a bunch of sounds too. We can try some forest sounds. Actually, maybe some birds would be easier for this. Like this. Take a short snippet of it. Just give it a moment to process the sound. Sometimes it can take a while if the sample is relatively long, just for it to, load it into the buffer. Right now I'm holding the sustain pedal, so the notes are being sustained from the piano. And you can basically just create a bunch of these really cool textures and basically sculpt the sound with any impulse response that you want, and it sounds pretty cool. Hi, this is me a day later. I just forgot in the process of editing this video that I was supposed to add in another tip, and I forgot to make an outro too, so I'm just gonna do that real quick. So, last tip is you can actually use Convolver to kind of create your own delay effects and some reverse reverbs too, which is really fun. So, just to do an example, I have a couple of impulse responses that I created yesterday. This one's called Five Spikes. It's basically just taking five Dirac delta functions. If you don't know what that is, it's basically just one sample of like you know, an audio sample. And basically, I just copied that a couple times and kind of created like a delay effect with it because every time that this Dirac delta function is going to be played is basically going to trigger the input signal again. So it kind of creates like a sort of delay effect. So if I get like an a cappella here. So you can hear that it's going on. The stretch can affect the timing of the delay, but can also affect how high definition it is. Because, this impulse response is recorded at a set sample rate. So if you're going to slow it down, eventually it's going to kind of lose some of the high fidelity. And it's kind of cool because it can create like a sort of lo-fi delay effect. With a so you're running late, and it's not even like you. We were doing so well. So yeah, that's really fun. You can also do something like a noise rise. So this is literally just like taking a stereo white noise sample and just fading it in. This kind of creates like a sweeping reverb effect, like a reverse reverb. So you can create these really like haunting kind of sounds. It'd be really cool to use it for uplifter kind of sounds, or just to use it as ambience. As well, you can do like the same thing, but the other direction, so it sounds like a reverb, and create some cool ambient sounds with it. And yeah, that was pretty much everything that I wanted to cover with convolution. At least that's the techniques that I have discovered so far. If there are any other cool techniques that you guys have found out with convolution, please let me know in the comments, and I'd love to hear what you guys can come up with. So that's basically it for the video. I hope you guys liked this video. If you want to hear more, make sure to like and subscribe. We're already almost at 500 subscribers already, which is honestly like really crazy, guys. I did not expect my latest video to get so popular, but I truly mean it, guys. Thank you guys for all the support you guys have given me recently. It's been motivating me to create a bunch more video for you guys, and hopefully we can grow a really cool community together. So I'm really stoked about that. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video, and see ya.